Thanks. So our speaker today is Jerry Schmitz, the Executive Director of the South Dakota Soybean Checkoff and South Dakota Soybean Association. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for your service. I also want to thank Mike Card. He and I have been friends for a long time. Our kids grew up together. We went through Boy Scouts, been a while ago. One of the parents at Boy Scouts came up and said, Mr. Schmitz, I have to tell you that I think you and Mr. Card have a strange and wonderful relationship. And I wasn't quite sure what that meant. So I asked, could you elaborate a little bit? And she said, yes, I think you're very strange, and he's wonderful. I want to talk to you a little bit about soybeans, but first I want to thank you for starting your meeting with a prayer. A lot of groups talk about it, but you don't see it carried through. And I really do think that is one of the things that has held all of our communities together and made us so strong. So again, thank you for doing that. And you talked about honesty and truth, and I'm going to share opinion with you. I have 22 board members, 2 different organizations, and oftentimes they'll ask me, you know, what can I use on social media, particularly on the checkoff side, because they are supposed to be non-political. And I share with them a couple of different things. One, look to the Bible. Not everything, but bearing false witness. That isn't necessarily not telling the truth. It might be sharing something that you really don't know whether it is truth or not, or you think it is and it supports your idea, so you share it. And so I point that out to them. And the other thing is, even if they're not hard political, I point out to them that it just takes one spark to start a fire, and if you do something that gets people to respond and then they get back and forth at each other, maybe that's the spark that puts the gun in the person's hand that kills someone. Why take that chance? Talk about the things that maybe you believe in that could help. Share your personal thoughts. Here's what we could do, and ask people, can you share yours, and maybe we can combine. Those are the type of things that I think are most important for our organizations. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. Want to talk a little bit about an organization or initiative that South Dakota Soybean started. It's called Hungry for Truth. We don't tell people this is what you should eat or shouldn't eat. We inform them. What is organic food? What is conventional food? What are GMOs? And what does science tell us about each of those? And we let people make their own decisions. So if you have the opportunity or have an interest, hungryfortruth.org. And we've had that initiative for about, well, since 2015. We get reactions from both coasts. We have had over 3 million responses. And we've actually even had an organization try to copy the exact website, and because we've trademarked it, our attorneys had to go after them. So anyway, I guess another thing, my soapbox. I've got some slides for you that try to describe what South Dakota Soybean does. Is there a way to, how do you make this go full? There we go. The first thing that I want to point out is we are 2 organizations. The first is the American Soybean Association, is a national organization that was actually started back in the 1930s by educators and researchers. And their goal was, because they could see that the Asian people China, Japan, number of others were utilizing soy, and their health seemed to be a little bit better. And so they wanted to bring that to the United States. By the 1940s, they had garnered enough interest from farmers that they turned the organization over to farmers. It exists today. Farmer volunteers are on that board. South Dakota has an affiliate called the South Dakota Soybean Association. It is for education, but it is also for policy. They visit with legislators. They visit with Chris, and they try to explain the position of farmers in South Dakota. The other organization, and that's the one I'm bringing up, is called the Checkoff organization. Every time a bushel of soybeans is sold in the United States, 0.5% of the value of that bushel is collected and placed into a fund for research, education, and promotion. The idea behind the whole thing at the start was, if you went back especially to the 1950s and 60s, farmers just put out their hand and said, okay, what's the market going to give me? And with the advent of the American Soybean Association, they started asking the question, what can we do to offer a better product and educate people across the world and want our product, which will drive price? And so that's what the Checkoff does. So we South Dakota collects everything sold in South Dakota. The elevators do that upon a sale, all the first purchasers. And it goes into a state fund. We're a quote-unquote pseudo-state agency. Since the South Dakota Checkoff was started by an act of the legislature, where the council is unofficially called a state board. And I'm a pseudo-state employee. All of the monies that are spent are only farmer dollars, nothing from the state. As a matter of fact, when we do something with the state, we pay them for the service. For instance, they assist us with payroll. We pay them to do that. They assist us with collections. We pay them to do that. So it's all farmer dollars. The types of things we get into: animal feed, which is the most huge use of soy. There are two components to soy. When they're crushed, there's soy meal, which is a high protein, and there's soybean oil. And so animal feed is about 97% of the use of soybeans. We're also doing biofuels. And it used to be called just biodiesel, but today a specific diesel can be made 100% from soy oil. In addition, there's an aircraft fuel now that many of the airlines are clamoring for to get their carbon footprint down. And it is 100% soy oil, but it's made into a diesel that has the same carbon chain as diesel fuel. But again, much less pollution, and carbon footprint is much, much smaller. Aquaculture. We have a company in South Dakota that's unique to the world. They produce a very high protein meal made from soy for fish that are farmed throughout the world. And the way that came about, and maybe we can make fun at SDSU a little bit, two professors were out hunting, walking across the field, probably 20 years ago. One of them looked at the other and said, have you ever thought about feeding soybeans to fish? And they chuckled about it. Well, when they went back to the lab, they decided to pursue it a little further. And they asked the Soybean Checkoff if they could have some funds to do a little more research. And they actually developed a product. Prairie Aquatech was a new company in South Dakota that was developed just for this product. And they are moving product across the world. Anytime that I'm at a trade show where we're talking about soybeans, I have purchasers from Asia, Africa, come to ask us about the product that Prairie Aquatech produces. As a matter of fact, they not only have the company Prairie Aquatech now, they call themselves HUDEC because they've moved from aquaculture to pet foods and they are doing research on human nutrition, proteins. So pretty exciting. In 2024, we produced about had about 5.1 million acres, 241 million bushels. That was a raw value of $2.7 billion into the South Dakota economy. And the reason I say raw is that was just the soybeans out of the field. When you take those soybeans and crush them, and we have crush plants, it increases the value. It adds a lot of value to both the meal and to the oil. And Prairie Aquatech being one of the examples. The pounds of soy in that fish product probably is 5 times the value of what just the soybean would be. We are number 1 in terms of state production. And I just wanted to point out, last year we had both drought and excess moisture. This area had some of the excess moisture that stopped farmers from planting some of the acres. But most areas had drought, and that cut production. This is the composition of a soybean: 19% oil, 34% protein, 21% insoluble carbohydrates, and 9% soluble, 4% ash, 13% moisture. All of those things, with the exception of moisture, can be used in some way or fashion. And here's where they go. 60% of U.S. soybeans are exported. 66 of South Dakota soybeans are exported to foreign markets. Globally, livestock and poultry consume 97% of our soybean meal. And I guess I should have pointed out where they go, the way that got started was, you're all probably familiar with the Marshall Plan after World War II for Europe. But U.S. was also assisting a number of other countries that they knew needed assistance. Japan was one where they knew they needed some type of a protein, and the country was devastated. So the government actually came to the American Soybean Association and asked, do you have any suggestions for how we can serve the Japanese people? And together, they had one of the first partnerships, private-public, where they were able to assist the Japanese with foods in order to get them started on rebuilding, and that partnership still exists today. When we talk about market development, we bring trade teams in. In South Dakota, a lot of Southeast Asian nations, China, Taiwan, Japan, Philippines, but we also bring in African nations. And we bring them in, one, to show them crops that are being grown, because they're very interested to see how they're being grown. They want to see sustainability. They want to see that farmers are protecting the land, and they want to see what the product is going to look like. And it's not uncommon for them. I had a trade team out probably 5 years ago on a farm just a few miles from Vermillion here. And the facilitator introduced them and was showing them some of the fields, and we were on the farmstead, and there were some grain bins, and all of a sudden the facilitator looks over and makes the comment, my insurance rates are going to go up. There were 2 of the foreign trade team members climbing up the grain bins. They wanted to see what was inside and what the quality was. We do trade missions. And those are, as a team of South Dakota board members. We have 9 board members. And I often will go with them. We visit foreign countries. We talk with buyers. We are not actually selling a product. We are PR. We are ambassadors. The people buying really want to talk with the farmers. They're going to go to the elevators or major grain companies to purchase, but they want to talk with the farmers. And the farmers want to talk with them because if there's certain things that they need that the farmer can supply that will add value, so much the better. Sustainability has become huge, particularly Europe, but all nations. They want to know the carbon footprint. And the farmers here want more education, and we do a lot of research using checkoff dollars to find out better ways to be producing, save water, save the soil, those sorts of things. China, they're a huge customer. This is Dalian. It's a port city in China. You can see their infrastructure. It's second to none. But the big thing, as I mentioned at the beginning, relationships and networking, those are really the things that are most important. Especially for people in other countries, and I would say less so for us business people in the United States, the relationship is the most important thing. The purchase or the sale comes second. Not that they're always not after the best price, they are. But the relationship is something that's huge. To me, as businessmen, sometimes what we do is, we've made the sale, let's move on to the next customer. And for them, it is, how can we carry on this relationship? I'll give you a couple examples recently. South Dakota Trade brought in the Consul General from India, Prakash Dupa. And he wanted to meet South Dakotans, see what business was here, but he also wanted to share the things that they have. He's really interested in getting Indian wine on our markets. And so we went around the table. There were a few legislators, South Dakota Trade folks, there were businesses, and there were a few educators. And each person introduced themselves and what their interest was, what they were hoping to move. And when it was my turn, I explained thanked him that they were purchasing some soy meal for poultry, but that I thought their aquaculture market could be huge for them. But after that, I said, but the most important thing is that we have a friendship. Put everything else aside. We want the friendship first, even if you don't buy anything. And when we left the meeting, the guy gave me the biggest bear hug I've ever had and invited me to his home to meet his family. That's what your relationships are about. I think that was a foot in the door. We've communicated since. If I can assist him in sharing his wine products with vendors, would love to do it. And I think that will be an assist for us in the future. India is a huge future market. Taiwan has been a great market. In 2019, we celebrated 50 years of trade back and forth with soybeans. I was invited and asked South Dakota Secretary of Agriculture Vanneman to attend with me. There were people there that had been retired for over 10 years in Taiwan that asked specifically if they could be invited to that meeting because they wanted to meet with the U.S. people that they had done so much business with and make sure that they were maintaining their relationships. They called a few of us on stage, and while I don't sing well, we sang "Take Me Home, Country Roads" together. To hear that in broken English is pretty funny, but again, the networking and the relationships. Our South Dakota team visited Morocco. You can see Michelle Rook in the picture there, and on the other side is Dawn Shire. She's a board member. In the center is one of the largest feed buyers in Morocco. And what you see in the back is actually not soybean meal. That is Dakota Gold, which is Poet's DDGs. And we were excited just to have the opportunity to see that and have him bring it up to us. And I guess another thing I'd like to point out is we do not see Poet as competition for protein. Anytime that we can do things that leverage South Dakota or the United States, that's a benefit for everybody. The old saying, a rising tide lifts all ships, I'm a true believer in that. This is a very large mosque in Casablanca. We try our very best to learn a little bit about the cultures while we're there, and this is a Muslim country. They are some of the most friendly people that I had ever met. They are very welcoming of all religions. They showed us through the mosque. The only request they had was that we take off our shoes coming through. Can you see that in the back at all? Pretty tough. It was an itinerary, or part of an itinerary from when we went to Morocco, and the only thing I wanted to point out was the types of things we do, because a lot of people hear about, well, you just went on a junket, and I have to tell you, it's usually a 5 to 7 day run. In this case, we met with Foreign Ag Services when we got to Morocco. We went to a wheat mill training center. What's that have to do with soybeans? Well, it's a food product from the United States. And again, if we can assist them in leveraging, so much the better. But we learned a little bit about what their interest in Morocco was in the wheat, and maybe we've got a product that we could also assist with. And at the bottom there, for any of you that have watched Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart, Rick's Cafe, we went to Rick's Cafe for lunch. And on another day, we visited a feed mill and a poultry training center. They, because their economy is coming, they're training people on how to raise poultry, how to process poultry, and poultry consumes such a huge amount of meal. That was an important spot for us to visit. And then on the last day, we visited the largest processing plant in Morocco. And to meet those folks, have them ask us questions, and to be able to share information back and forth is fantastic. New uses for soybeans. There are over 1,000 uses for soybeans and growing every day. Food, feed, fiber, fuel, plastics, lubricants, preservatives, solvents, adhesives, building materials, insulation, cosmetics, rejuvenators, paint, and dust suppressants. And we're continually working on new uses. The Checkoff, we work with universities to do research, and we also work with private companies. We have a new firefighting foam. And for those of you who have been on fire departments, you probably realize that cancer is the #1 death of firemen that are on the line. And part of the reason for that is the foams used to distinguish fires have PFAS in them. And they're quote-unquote forever chemicals. Once they're on you, they're not going to come out. Once they hit the ground, it takes an environmental cleanup. And so especially in cities like New York, where they need those to put out fires, then there has to be an environmental cleanup behind them. With the soy product, it's a soy meal, believe it or not, and it can run down the gutter. It's environmentally safe. We did a project with Goodyear tires, and when I say we, I'm talking about all of the states through the national board. We wanted to figure out if soy oil could replace petroleum, and it can. Goodyear is using that product now. One of the first things that we did in state was when they had the Eagle Enforcers, which are a police and sheriff product, specially built for them. We gave them to probably 50 of the sheriff's office in South Dakota, and to the police departments in Rapid City and Sioux Falls. And they do now have car passenger tires, and their goal is to, by 2030, have all of their production be with soy oil. Fish and pet food, I mentioned a little bit earlier. if you've never had the opportunity and you're in Brookings sometime, ask if you can go through the Prairie Aquatech Research Facility. It's pretty stunning what they're doing. And we're talking shrimp as well. And this is their new product for pet foods. And you won't see it advertised as Hudak because it's an additive. They sell it to pet food companies for the protein in it, very high protein. One of the things that I hadn't mentioned was soybean meal has all essential amino acids required by animals and fish. What influenced prices? Demand, transportation, trucking, interest rates, exchange rates, strong versus weak dollar, strength of each country's economy, global competition, and a big one is governments, tariffs, and taxes. Give you an example, back in 2018, when we were scrapping with China, we kept very close track of the results. And as a matter of fact, I had written a letter to the president saying, please, if there's another way you can get around this, do not put a tariff because South Dakota will be the point of the arrow. It cost each South Dakota soybean producer $50,000 on average. Now, the government did come back and say, okay, this was for the benefit of the entire country, we will help to reimburse that. And so that was helpful, but what it doesn't change is we lost markets because people are looking for reliable suppliers. And when we appear as though we might not be reliable, they're going to seek other markets. According to several retired generals, admirals, and former chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, international trade and humanitarian aid are first-of-line protection for peace and security of the United States and the world. I don't know if you folks have heard of it. There's an organization called the United States Global Leadership Coalition. Former President Jim Abbott and former Governor Dugard are the chair people in South Dakota. I am also on that board. As a matter of fact, I did a 30-second commercial which is running CNN and Fox right now nationwide. And it is about the investment, whether it's in humanitarian aid or trade, is leveraged many, many times. And the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs have told us, if you take that away, you'd better increase the military budget 4 to 5 times. Because these things establish relationships, they keep the bad actors out, because they will be in there if we pull out. Questions? Have I gone over my time here? Yes?
I went to your dinner. It was very nice.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Soybeans and you celebrate, but I learned from a colleague of yours how you started way back in the day in South Dakota.
Oh.
Could you share that story? I think it's very
Okay. Here in South Dakota, back in the early 80s, I graduated out of SDSU, and one of the first meetings I attended after coming out was a farmer elevator meeting. And there was an individual there speaking about this American Soybean Association, which I didn't know anything about. And his question to us was, what if you could drive the value of your product? And for a fresh college student, not knowing any better, I was all over that. And so I met with him afterward, and just to learn a little bit more. And about a week later, I received a call, and it was him asking if I would like to start an affiliate in South Dakota. And so what we actually did was, there were no cell phones at that time. This was in Elk Point, South Dakota. We went to the ambulance barn and asked for permission to have 4 phones installed. And we got farmers' names through the extension service and through county agents, and just started calling people. And the big thing at that time was South Dakota was losing rail, and today our prices would be $2 to $3 less if we didn't have it, because we ship a lot of product west. And so that was one big one. We wanted to retain rail in South Dakota. Another one was there were ships from the United States that weren't in the best health, and the Merchant Marine wasn't keeping up their ships, but we were being required to utilize U.S. ships or pay a higher price for foreign flag ships. It didn't make us a difference which it was, as long as it was a good ship and our product got where it needed to be without being spoiled. And on the U.S. ships, it was being spoiled. And so that was another issue that we attacked at the time. And that got farmers' interest. And so we needed 200 members. We got that in about 4 nights. And I guess the rest is history. A year later, the American Soybean Association came to us and said, maybe it's time you think about starting a checkoff since you did so well at affiliating. And my response was, we're tired. I think we had enough. And they said, no, this is really important. We're moving in markets. As a matter of fact, we're working on China right now. And so we went to the legislature. I talked with a number of people, met with Governor Janklow, and they were all on board. Governor Janklow's comment and the chairman of the majority party at that time said, this is going to go through, but it'll probably take you 3 years. Nothing goes through the first year. Amazingly, it went through the first year. And we've been a checkoff in South Dakota since that time. Thank you. Yes?
As I understand it, a soybean from Arkansas looks very much like a soybean from South Dakota.
Absolutely.
How do you segregate South Dakota growing soybeans?
Sometimes they aren't. Oftentimes they are. And here's the difference. Our amino acid complex in the northern part of the United States is different than any other place in the world. It's taken a lot of research to figure that out. If you go far, far south, South America, theirs would be the same way. But it's a very limited area. And so that's what we market on. Otherwise, we're marketing a product and it's a benefit for everybody. As I say, a rising tide lifts all ships, so we push it. But and another advantage that we have over Arkansas, farmers here harvest September, October, maybe November if it gets late. Their product is all automatically put in a freezer because it gets cold here. In the southern states, it's warm and has a greater tendency to age quickly. So we do have an advantage there. But good question.
How is the acreage of corn versus soybeans?
It really goes kind of back and forth. The two have been used largely as a rotation. There's almost nobody that goes continuously with one crop. And we're moving toward at least 3 or 4 to try to get a better rotation. With technology, we're getting some things, opportunities that may exist. For instance, soybeans don't have a very large root mass. In other words, they don't hold the soil well. They do bring in nitrogen from the air, which most crops do not, and so they provide a fertilizer for the soil. And then corn can come back and utilize that without having to put on more artificial fertilizers. So a rotation pretty much stays in place, and I think we're going to see some small grains and hopefully some more livestock coming in as part of that rotation. Back in the 80s, for those of you who might remember, the economists at the time were telling us everybody's diversified to the point where you aren't really good at one thing. What you really need to do is focus on one thing. And a lot of folks got out of the livestock market at that time. But another reason was it's just costly to have those buildings, and then the time when you have to do the crop, you need to be there, so you either hire more people. But anyway, so I think we're going back to better diversification, and that will be helpful to the land as well. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So they don't have to use all the artificial fertilizers?
Well, that helps. It doesn't completely take care of it. The cover crops, The greater advantage is weed control, protection from wind and water, but also holding the soil in place because of the roots. But also, depending on which crop you use, some of those roots, even in a fine-bladed plant, will go down 3-4 feet, and that's a tremendous asset.
What are some of the typical?
I tell you what, it really ranges widely. In some cases, radishes, and for that's to help loosen the soil a little bit. But there are just wheat grasses. Some folks are using types of clover. Just a wide array. And we're learning more all the time.
I recall the possibility of aviation fuel plant
Yes, it exists.
in South Dakota, which is apparently in jeopardy.
Oh.
Pipeline. And
Yes.
what's the status of that?
I asked that question a week ago of people from the Lake Preston area. They don't know. But I do know, and I'm not going to push it, I do know if they can't do, they need the pipeline is what they say. If they can't do that, they can do it with soybeans rather than corn, because that's what the design was going to be for, and they don't need a carbon pipeline. We don't give up the carbon dioxide if a soybean is used. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. We need to do our 50-50 draw.